I have the incredible privilege of working closely with these digital leaders and experts. This panel, we're going to continue talking about the future of CX, of customer experience, the ever-evolving expectations from customers. I also invite you all to start thinking about questions based on who we have sitting here. So I'm sure you have lots, and also online. Please feel free to submit your questions. I'll have them on the iPad. Sure. So we were very lucky to already see Pierre and Mikael on the stage, but I'd like to introduce Joost from none other than Spotify. I'm sure a big favorite, definitely my favorite app, I have to say. Yeah. Also, fun fact, Joost is a international mountain leader now, which means if you want to do a few-day hike, he's your man. Go speak to him after. So Joost, I'm going to hand over to you to kick things off for us. If you can tell us a bit about yourself, and also answer the first very general question of basically what changes expectations, changes, and challenges you see for the coming year under the umbrella of CX, and how does Spotify plan to stay ahead of the game?
Cool, sure, thank you. So I took a year off to become an international mountain leader. So for any crazy offsite that you want to do, feel welcome to meet me afterwards. It might be a trip of a lifetime, also maybe the last trip of your lifetime, but it will definitely be something that you will remember. In my daily life, I am the director of user growth optimization at Spotify. I've been doing that for the last 7 years, and has been a really interesting journey. I think a little bit about what Gary said before about your question. It's the user is still really like demanding more and more personalized experience. And I think one of the ways we're trying to meet that demand is by, for example, what we're doing right now. We went live with that yesterday in 4 more markets. It's called AI Playlist. So people can just actually write what kind of playlist they want to create. Then it will automatically, based on how good you write your query, create a playlist based on your user behavior in the past and what they expect you to want to listen to in the future. So for example, if you want to make a road trip between Paris and Stockholm, then it will tell you like, okay, this is probably what you want to listen to, and play it for your whole trip.
Nice. I'm looking forward to that as an avid user of Spotify. Okay. I don't know if anyone from the audience has any questions yet. Raise your hand. Okay. Counting on you, so maybe soon. Okay, my next question, I'm going to ask 2 actually to you, Mikael. Okay, so we know that the future of customer experience, actually Gary spoke about this quite a bit, is a balance between personalization but also trust. So what do you think is the secret sauce? How do we make customers feel seen like they want to feel, but also maybe not stalked like we sometimes feel? Yeah, so that's the first question. And the second question is just in general about AI and your thoughts about that today.
So on the first question, I think, I would like to break down some barriers here, to be honest. I think that there's a lot of regulation coming into place where, hippos in the political arena are making potential decisions that will affect the consumer experience in a negatively impact, potentially, and maybe will also lessen the way that we can advance in some areas and actually use data for good things. Of course, there's an important line here in terms of what you regulate and how you do that thing. But there's there's more good to be done than harm, I think. But right now that is sitting a bit separate from the companies that are maybe leading the way in this area, like Spotify, for instance, in music, or Contentsquare on the behavioral arena. And I wish that the industry would come together, basically, and have more of an impact when it comes to what can be done to achieve like a higher consumer experience in a lot of fields. And on the second questions, I think on AI and agents, Gary spoke about you know what's happening right now. There's interesting examples of this, and of course everyone's looking to Silicon Valley and other places. But I don't know if anyone's heard here about the Rabbit R1 device, for instance. It's super interesting. It's basically like a new phone, which is LLM but action based and agents built into one. So it's kind of like a smartphone meets a super app. So you can do anything. You just tell it like, yeah, today I'm gonna schedule a bank appointment, and I want you to, before that, wire some money to it and make an investment. And yeah, oh, by the way, is that a good investment or not? And then, you know, please do it for me. So this is a company that I think Google and Apple have started to look at, and they want to acquire it. Maybe, like you say, they had a better launch a little bit early, and it's been very debated on where it will take and go on from here. But those are the kind of things that will also like push the boundaries. So it's not a given with AI. I think that the big 6-7 giants will be the ones to lead the way. It could easily be anyone really that comes up of how to use the data in a smart way.
Nice. Very in line with Gary's talk, these questions and discussions. Okay, keeping with the game theme for today. So if CX is a game, then I would say our metrics are the scoreboard. So this one's for you, Pierre. What KPIs should brands focus on so they don't just think they're winning, they know, you know, that they're killing it, or maybe the opposite, they're not killing it?
Well, before we even answer this question, Talia, I think it's important. It's an important time of history, right? The emergence of AI, like any technology trend, tend to transform societies. This one is coming faster than the others, and it probably have consequences which are probably bigger than the others. Who am I to say that? I don't know. It's more a feeling than anything else, right? Internet was a big revolution, clearly. AI takes that to another level. And as a consequence, right, we see it's going so fast that indeed the pendulum needs to swing several times before we really find what's really the right way, right? Because you see it swinging between what is going to be our jobs and what's going to be automated. It's swinging between hyper-personalization for a need and at the same time the need for regulation. And you really see that the things are in flux. It will require a lot of agility in the next years to be able to leverage the technology advances that we are able to now put into our jobs and projects, and at the same time a lot of ethics and thinking process with probably some political help and a little bit of thought leadership in our companies for sure, to be able to identify what's going to be the right balance between the two, right? I'm ready to be highly personalized in terms of the interaction of the services which are given to me. I use Spotify so much that if indeed they use my data and my past listenings to be able to derive from me a great playlist so that I will entertain my friends in the evening or tonight at the party, you know what? I'm happy to do this, right? But if it starts to be also for merchandising products or if it's sold to other partners, this is probably where it starts to be really creepy and we've got to be very careful. So what does that mean for customer experience? It means that the possibilities that we're going to have are probably going to be endless, that they will probably have to be curated very much under the brand intent and your intent as digital experience developers, because it's going to be very easy otherwise to go off-road, off-track, and not do things which we believe are eventually good for the brands. And there's obviously one level down. Once you've built this vision for what you want to do, you will have to derive KPIs to be able to track that. And what's striking to me is over the last years, the KPIs were, at least in the Contentsquare world, were a lot about friction, right? And it's probably one of the things which is interesting, right? There is a very positive way to think about the future of that industry, which tends to be innovation and better services and what brand can give as value. And at the same time, we still have to focus a lot on making it less worse than it is, because you remember, right, 39% of those sessions which have frustrations always makes me feel that there should be some metrics, even though they can be perceived sometimes as negative, as how do I reduce friction? before we reinvent the world, which is probably a good thing to get waken up in the morning, right? I'm going to reinvent the world. Yeah, great. How about making sure that everything that we have already works? And that's probably one of the key metrics for customer experiences these days. We talked about frictionless, we talk about low tolerance, we talk about impatience of everybody around the room, but even more with the generations which are coming out of age. And obviously this tolerance to lag time, to not being proposed the right experience, to needing to say the same thing again to different operators is obviously going away very fast and can't be tolerated anymore.
Nice. Joost, any thoughts on that? The KPI topic, how you're doing today at Spotify, how do you measure that? And then also think about the future and future metrics.
Well, I think when it comes to metrics, we have slowly changed a little bit from going, for example, to only looking at customer growth to also look like how we're looking at retention. And I think that is one of the things as well about like customer experience. The loyalty of your customer already starts before they become a customer. So like how do we make sure that what we promise our customer, we actually also meet that, so that we give the same kind of like the value that we promise a customer, that also directly after they buy or purchase the service, what they're looking for, that is exactly what they get delivered as well. So we're trying to look more into that KPIs and looking more into the loyalty/retention perspective, not so much only on the purchasing one.
Nice. Also at Apoteket, Mikael, is retention a big topic?
It is. I mean, we're looking at the lifetime value as well, quite intense to see, over a large period of time how one customer maybe goes from one segment into another, so that we keep them, depending on what their needs are, essentially. Like, because in our industry, which is, pharmacy and pharmacy products, of course, you may use our services and our products a little bit different depending on your age or needs, which maybe is a little bit different. I say that you probably listen to different music at Spotify, right? But here you actually have like needs tied to like a medical condition, for instance. So we need to understand those kind of like patterns between segments and how we can, shape the consumer experience based on those, for instance.
Great. I'd love to hear from the audience. I'm sure our experts would as well. Anyone have any questions? Maybe you have questions now that you've heard more from them. Very shy audience.
Some questions must be. Don't be shy.
Okay, let's look online. Okay, here's one. So, we're all humans and working with humans, but what's one piece of tech? And I know in the talks today, it was a lot about not everything is about the technology, but if you could think of one piece of technology besides AI that would change the CX game, what would it be? Who wants to start? Joost, I'm going to pick on you.
So the question is, what would be
one piece of technology that's going to change the customer experience game?
And you cannot answer AI in this case.
So maybe if it's not technology, yeah.
Definitely. Except AI, I think also like we are like maybe now bypassing the whole ML part, but machine learning, at least for us, is still like a very big thing as well. And instead of having things being very operator heavy, to have a lot of like, for example, ML-based campaigns for our users. Because maybe not every user needs the same offering. And that's where ML is really helpful for us. So ML is the other big thing.
Nice. Machine learning.
Yep.
Thoughts, Pierre?
Yeah, I believe a lot into, it's not AI, but it's about these conversational interfaces, right? This is, we spend the last, 15 years moving away progressively from the keyboards, right? Now we still have the keyboards, although it's changed, right? Remember when the first iPhone came out, the world was still on Blackberries and they had a keyboard, and a lot of people were keeping the keyboard and we got used to touch interfaces, right? But we're still keyboarding on a touch interface. And I guess the next wave is going to go from texting and writing to talking. Because if you think about how much emotions, content, culture, intention, context comes out of the conversations we have, that says a lot, right? Eventually, even if you find somebody on Tinder, you're eventually going to see that person face to face, and you're probably not going to text, you're probably going to talk. So if we can transpose all the things that we've been doing over the last 15 years to make the keyboard more easy, I think this is just going to go away in the next years, and you're going to probably talk to Spotify and ask him, hey, I'm on the way to Stockholm, please give me the playlist, and it would just launch, and that will start to be a human-to-machine discussion and interaction, which is probably going to be a bit creepy, but actually going to seem much more natural.
I'm actually going to take it down one level. I think that's going to be... Is anyone from Microsoft here? No. If you're on presentation mode in PowerPoint and you go out or exit presentation mode, it gets you to the top of the presentation deck. Can someone please fix that? That would take like...
Just use Google Slides.
Yeah.
It doesn't do it.
I mean,
Exactly.
but then again, if someone knows someone at Microsoft, this is a bug that would save a lot of people's time that are hippos like us.
But by the way, Gary, we have this conversation after. I want to hear what the management consulting companies are doing in terms of slide generation.
Slide generation. I love how the whole Apoteket team is laughing because they all have to use Microsoft because you don't have Google. We actually have a question from the online audience. They're beating you to it. So I'm going to now go backwards. I'm going to start with you, Mikael. What is one thing management can do to enable data-driven CX and product development?
Be endorsers and really try to democratize it. Like put it into the development goals of the individuals in your organization. So like how can you think of 4 ways to start to use AI, for instance, in your daily activities, whatever they are, large and small. It doesn't have to be like to build agents or come up with the next business model that is driven by AI, but just how can you save 10-15% of your time? I think that would be super valuable.
Joost, thoughts on management?
Yeah, make them understand the value of it, and especially like we talked a lot about hippo today. Like I mean, that is the thing we really want to avoid, and like make them understand like how many wrong decisions have been taken in the past because of that. And I think in many ways I would not like to work in organizations anymore that are not data driven. So that would be like pretty much a demand.
Yeah, I could not agree more. We all know it, right? The corporate environment is not a democracy. Eventually, some people have to make the decisions. Usually, those people can be highly placed in the organization. But it's good, right? The market outside is pretty accelerating, and there's a lot of digital careers. I mean, be picky on your leadership. I don't know whether this joke will come through, but I mean, there are 3 types of leaders. There's the ones that know how to count and the ones that don't. If you don't have leaders that are familiar with data, which are able to really grasp numbers and eventually make decisions on those data, not just on guts and feelings, maybe it's not the right company.
Well, we're definitely working for the right company. All of us on the stage. Another check-in, maybe my last one. Yes, we have a question.
Yeah, I have a question about leveling up the CX game, and then with the VECAG or the Accessibility Act. How can you kind of balance those two? Any thoughts? What are you guys doing there?
So, I mean, this is an area where we have worked a lot in the last 6 months, and we have our crew here that was working with on a daily basis and would roll it out like, partially. It's also a bit of a fine line, I think. You can go the full on, and maybe that will impact your experience to a large degree. So you have to take it step by step here. But it's super important. And if you do it right, I don't think it has to negatively hurt your user experience or your customer experience. But you need to find the right people that are experts on this. And there are companies that lead by examples here as well. I think Apple are doing amazing. We've seen some fantastic rollouts in their products. I saw the unlike what's the Braille, exactly. So yeah, with the touch screen, kind of like navigating a website, which to me is that's cool. That's really cool. So, but maybe voice will help here as well. But if you don't speak, I mean, there's so many angles to it. So yeah, I'll leave it there. Maybe you have.
I mean, voice is definitely a big thing for us too. And except that, accessibility is also for how can people actually acquire Spotify in many different countries. So it's also about not only offering like the normal ways of paying for it, but also making sure that in our local markets, we're offering the payment methods that people have, and so they can actually purchase it and experience it. So not only about how the website looks like.
I mean, this is typically the kind of things that needs to come from your values, right? Eventually, if you design accessible experiences, or if you have development guidelines that reduce the weight of your web pages because you're aware of the impact on the environment that websites and technology have, then it's okay to do it, right? And if it's not, do it the same. But if it is not sincere, at least you can maybe find a business angle for that. But I prefer people to do it for a business reason without maybe the cause behind it, but at least they do it. At Contentsquare, we invested into a foundation which actually bought and gave in open source a plugin that actually allows you to modify the site automatically for your disabilities, and at least it helps compensate the experience you usually get on some normal websites by either, I mean, changing the font size, changing the contrast, or resizing or redoing the page, or also identifying the different syllabes of a word so that dyslexia doesn't come in the way. And I believe also there should be maybe more efforts being done indeed at government and also open source level to be able for those technologies to be widespread so that they can compensate the experience you give on websites and apps by giving you this layer that provides a better interaction.
Great, thanks everyone. Any more questions from the live audience? Okay, I have another one from our online audience. What roles would you have in the perfect CX team?
Well, now with AI, we don't need any designers anymore in the team, at least.
You're saying that because Andreas is in the audience?
Yeah, I am saying that. I mean, like in many ways, so you can like run your team as independent as you can. So you want to have some front-end developers. You want potentially to have Android and iOS developers if you have an app in that one too. You want to have your own data scientist, your own data engineer. And then potentially some project managers / PM product managers as well that can then sit in other teams and share the experiences and share the knowledge in other areas, so they can really maximize the combined effort that we do.
I'll throw in a data architect and some other personalization specialists as well, and so on. So, but if you can't afford all this, what about a really good webmaster? That would be amazing. Take all the decisions, you know.
It all starts with that, right?
Great, thank you. All right.
Time-wise?
Time-wise, I think we can have one last question. We spoke a lot. Pierre, do you want to?
No.
Share anything? We spoke a lot about innovation today as well. So I think something really interesting is, I mean, obviously it's very much needed with the environment that's continuously changing. So how do you as leaders foster a culture of innovation in your organization? Mikael?
Cool. I can start.
Okay, yes.
I think the most important thing is to make sure that people are not afraid to fail. So to keep on celebrating failures fail yourself a lot, share failures all the time. Make sure that you also show that you dare to take steps and that you're not afraid for confrontations and to do things that are out of the ordinary. So I think by fostering that kind of like attitude, you will get to innovation.
And yeah, I think that's a great answer. You can work specifically with initiatives like innovation hubs, hackathons, those kind of things as well, and identify the right people, because there are people that want to do these things, but not everyone is suited for it either. So, you know, if it's a person that has been hired 2 weeks ago but has the right ideas, I would like, as leader or the leaders that I manage, basically to identify those people quickly as well, and not, you know, follow hierarchy in any ways when it comes to innovation, because the best ideas could come from really anyone that brings something to the table, any day, really.
Nice. Yeah.
I think it ultimately comes to conviction and resilience. Conviction, because you need to be absolutely convinced that innovation is going to be key for you, right? In the software industry, it's pretty easy, right? You know that you can be ripped off the market in 2 years and you were a nice SaaS company with an innovative tool, and guess what? You're actually outpaced by competition or by a different way to work. So at least I believe we've got that in our DNA. But then there is the resilience that comes in, to get back to Gary's comment, which is, it's very easy to be resilient when everything goes well and you've just been through a fundraising. It's way harder when obviously the market slows down, when you're getting to a certain size, and in that case, it's a matter of resilience, right? If you start to eat into this innovation budget, then you're actually downgrading your future. And this is where budgetary, eventually arbitration also come in the way, and you've got to make sure you sanctify those investments and don't touch them, because otherwise it's your future.
Nice. So, in summary, growth mindset and celebrate failures, learn from everyone, and resilience and conviction. I think that's a nice way to end this off. Really, really thank you for joining and sharing your wisdom with us, because I know I can personally learn a lot from you, and I'm sure everyone learned a lot today, and in general the whole day. So, yeah, thank you everyone, and thanks.
Thank you.
Great round of applause.
Pleasure. Thank you, guys.